and that fun time where we find out that we are actually live. Welcome, everybody, to the Making Awesome Podcast, Season 2, Episode 37, where I am joined by a good
Hi.
friend. Even though we haven't talked a ton, we're involved in like 3 different things together. I'm like, oh, it's the same guys all the time. But I love this. This is Andy. He is kind of the creator of Hero Me, the fan duct that a lot of you might know if you're running some printers that have, let's say, lackluster cooling. But Andy, can you give us the Backstreet Boys, the who you are, the where you from, the what you did, and as long as you love me.
Sure. Hey, hi everybody. I have been a little background. I was in broadcast television in the '70s. I worked for Atari in the '80s. I worked for Apple in the '90s. I've been a product developer. I've also been a web developer for 25 years, and got into 3D printing about 9 years ago. Started off with a couple of Kickstarter projects, and then picked up a Wanhao and then an Ender 3. And what I found was that you know the printer worked, and but it just didn't work as well as I felt it could. And I was seeing lots of other people doing mods of this and that, and I found a guy that did a mod for part cooling that kind of made sense, and I checked it out, worked it, used it, saw it improved my prints. Started giving him feedback, and so we kind of collaborated on improving that cooling system. And it turned into the Hero Me, and he, Kilo Kara on Thingiverse, had to back away, had some family things, had a baby, so had to focus on family. So I kind of took over the project, and so for the past 4 years now almost, have been building and building. And the key thing behind it was that it was a standard. It was a way in which things could be modified to work for different printers, different hot ends, different direct drives, different fans, different ABLs, and that's what you. Yeah, I think the other system that if you're really into 3D printing, you're probably familiar with the EVA for Core XY systems. It's a very nice design that's also very modular. Of course, David Petzel's Petzvang has been around a little longer than the Hero Me has. But he does one-offs. These are all one-offs.
Yep.
And so the Hero Me and the EVA are really, I think, the only systems out there that are really modular that, because of what I did was to separate the body from the X carriage to create adapters. So the whole thing becomes compatible with a new printer just by creating a new adapter. Uh,
That's what I like about it. And I know we talked a little bit before we went live that I've actually never used the Hero Me system. I've actually outside of, and I have it here because it was from the printer that we set on fire, the Wanhao i3 that I had, outside of the DIII cooler, which was designed years ago. I've never really done like any crazy off-the-shelf cooling mods. Now we have some
It's interesting
printers.
it's interesting you picked that up because that was actually my first mod. I got a Wanhao, used i3 Plus, and the cooling sucked, and I saw the D triple,
It works.
and it worked. But there were some problems with it. So there's actually a remix on Thingiverse that I did that gave you a tiny little window to see the hot end, and
That was
I
literally
cleaned
the
up.
worst. That was the worst. You couldn't see
Yeah.
it.
You
And
couldn't
you're
you couldn't see the hot end. Everybody wants to look at that first layer going down.
well, see, and this is back in the dark days of 3D printing where printers did not have thermal runaway, they did not have auto bed leveling, they did not have PEI. If you had a glass plate, it's because you added it.
Right.
And you were lucky to have a heated bed. And so seeing that first layer was not just because, ooh, first layer porn. No,
Right.
it was there because you needed to make sure your print was going to stick. It wasn't
Right.
as click print and walk away as it's been. Like all the prints that are done behind me finished at some point yesterday. I wasn't around. And that's the great thing about 3D printing now is that it is so much more reliable and better cooling solutions
Yeah.
make this a thing. So the Hero Me, how did that all kind of get started for
Well,
you?
the thing is that whether it be Wanhao or Ender or Creality others, the cooling that they put on these things, it's an afterthought. It's a checkbox. Oh, we've got this part called part cooling. There's absolutely no design work that they did to actually what would be the right way to properly cool the part as it's being extruded.
Right.
And like I said, where you picked up that D triple cooler for the Wanhao was like, oh gee, I saw a benefit, and that's where I got involved in designing was okay, what's a free, easy way? I found this thing called Tinkercad. It's designed for elementary kids. It's really easy to learn. And that's how I got started was tweaking things in Tinkercad.
Right.
And so you're right. It's looking at that part, and many of the other cooling systems that I saw out there were like the one you showed, where it surrounds the hot end, and I think just a lot of brute force went into them. Mm-hmm. In that, how can we get a lot of air down there? And no real work was put into, is this actually, physics-wise working? And so that's the thing that I got into when I got into doing the Hero Me, was working on, let's figure out, is the airflow actually working right? So with a single cooler, single fan, the air's coming in one direction. All right. So if you have an overhang that's going the other way, you're not cooling the underside of that overhang, and so it's going to droop. And so people, oh, well, then we'll put two fans. And what they did was they put them 180 degrees opposite of each other. Right? Oh, okay, we're going to cool the other side of the part. Well, the problem there is you got two airflows coming at each other at a point. What happens? It's called turbulence.
Yep.
Right? This is what happens. And that is not good for cooling. And that's what I was seeing out there. And so I did some research. I looked at stuff about airflow and aviation, that sort of thing. And you need to create a laminar flow. And so that's what has been done with the Hero Me and now other modern systems like David Petzel's Petsvang as well, is that the airflow comes down and is angled like a capital Y. Think of it as a capital Y. And the airflow comes together and pushes out the back. So you get a much more laminar flow, and it doesn't do all this. And so that's the actual design here, is that the airflow is coming at an angle. So it looks like, oh, gee, they're opposite of each other. And people also ask, well, gee, why is the nozzle not in the center? Why is it down here at the tip? Well, it's by design, because the air is not going straight. The air is actually going this way and that way, mm-hmm. to meet underneath the nozzle and push out the back. And it actually, if you've got enough pressure going on, it actually creates a low pressure zone that pulls air from the front.
Bernoulli, yeah, that's
right. So that's the thing is I found that by doing that, you could run the fans slower, right? And then you get quieter. Everybody complains about the fans being too noisy. How can I make this printer quiet? I read posts where it's beside the bed. Okay, how can I make it quieter? So the
move the
fans,
printer to another room.
Right.
Problem solved.
The fans from the factory, they're always set to 100%. And early on, when people were using the Hero Me, and after I published it, they go, well, this thing's so noisy and it's too much air. I'm going, yeah, you don't have to run it at 100%. You can dial it down. And in fact, with the dual fan, I typically run the dual fans at 40%, and you get twice as much airflow. It's dead whisper, quiet, silent.
Yeah.
And when it comes to overhangs and bridging, I speed it up to maybe 60-65%. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things about the Hero Me. In fact, there's a YouTube video by a guy named You Make Tech, where he implemented the Hero Me Gen 5. We're on Gen 6 now. And he has a video. I had actually done it, but never recorded a video. He's got an ender where he's done the corner to corner, two little 20-millimeter towers, and then doing a bridge.
Gosh.
At 240 millimeters. And you watch the nozzle. That string, that filament goes straight, solid, no sagging, no supports. And he makes a full bridge. And that's what the Hero Me, you can do extreme bridging. You can do extreme overhangs. And you just get really great cooling.
All right, we're gonna talk off stream, because I have a printer that I want to do this on, but Yeah, it's a proprietary printer, so you know it's going to require some finagling to say the
Okay.
least. But
So yeah,
I've never
that's
tried
what
bridging like that because
the
that's Mad Lad level of bridging.
yeah, and like I say, the proof is there. If if someone cares, they can go look up You Make Tech. He's got a video from a couple of months ago. He actually did several videos on the Hero Me Gen 5. And yeah, you can see him bridging 240 millimeters back and forth with no sagging. And so yeah,
On an
so
Ender, a printer that's not known by
yeah,
stock to have
right,
cooling that
right,
is worth
yep,
anything, right? The
right,
stock cooling on an Ender, you might as well just throw like it's. I tell people if you're gonna buy an Ender 3, the first thing you need to do is change the cooling because the cooling on an Ender 3 is garbage.
right,
It works if you don't care about overhangs. But if you care to have good prints and you
yep,
are trying to, make a relatively cheap printer print like a very expensive printer, cooling is one of those big places where companies can cut quite a few corners and it still works, but it doesn't
yeah,
work well. And so
right.
the Hero Me system, how much filament are we talking about to make it and what kind of extra parts is needed?
Yeah, so it's people complain that they say, oh, it's so much plastic, it's adding so much weight. Come on, guys. You're adding all these direct drive systems that are 200 and 300 grams. The Hero Me portion of this direct drive system is 10% at best. It's tiny. And so I honestly haven't weighed these in a long time, but it's really very little plastic. There are anywhere from 3 to 6 parts you need.
Okay.
Um, Part number one is what I call a gantry adapter. And so this is the first piece. This is what marries the Hero Me to your X carriage. Every X carriage has got a different set of mounting points. And a lot of people cloned Creality, but then they also did, tweaks and things on it for whatever their system is. And so this part has mount points that mount this to the X carriage. And then the
Right.
Hero Me mounts to this. So, and again, it's all about standardization. So on the back side of the Hero Me base are 4 mount points. These are set in stone, right? Never move.
Those
And
are
so
heat set threaded inserts,
and
correct?
and so with Gen 6, it's all heat set. Up
Okay.
until Gen 2 through Gen 5, it was all socketed hex nut, and people would complain about, oh, the hex nuts drop out. They're too tight, they're too loose, etc. So Gen 6 went to threaded inserts, and people are loving it. So
I do prefer threaded inserts. I have to buy the tool that because you use a soldering iron normally, but there are ones that have
yep.
a necked section to go inside the brass
That's right, and
thing.
that's
So
exactly worthwhile. It
yeah,
works otherwise, but get it straight and square. Yeah, and they're not expensive. They're $6-7 on Amazon. But yeah, so you have this gantry adapter.
right.
It goes to the X carriage, and then the Hero Me base mounts to that with screws going in from the back to hold that. In your hot end, now the bases are going to be different because you got different hot ends. So this particular one is designed for a E3D V6, so it's got the collar mount, right?
Yep.
And of course, Creality OEM is the 2 screws that go into the X carriage. So they're different bases, but all of them have the exact same mount points for the back. On the side are the mount points for the part cooling fans, and so
How
this is
many
also
heat
a
sets are in
standard.
here?
Well, because there are, a Fetus Rapido is taller than a volcano. It's
Right.
huge. So the nozzle is way down there. So you've got to have the ability to adjust the part
Ah.
cooling ducts up and
Okay.
down. So that's why there are multiple holes there, so you can get the right adjustment, right?
Gotcha.
So these holes are locked in stone. Of course, the front is for your heatsink fan, and you got 4 mount points there. On the bottom are 2 more, and this is for those guys who are big into clipper and want a 80XL 345 accelerometer. Well, there's a mount point on the bottom for those.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, this happens to be a Bowden Hero Me base. With Gen 6, I introduced having direct drive Hero Me's. Before that, direct drive was done through an extra bracket that clipped on the top of the V wheels, or maybe connected to the extruder, to the X carriage itself. But now, with Gen 6, I've got a standard mount points that for whether you've got a Sherpa or an Orbiter or a Bondtech BMG or an LGX or whatever, there are versions of this base that have the mounts on top for that particular extruder. And whether you want it in the back or in the front, so
And
there's
you're doing
lots.
all this in Tinkercad?
All in Tinkercad, yeah.
Boy.
So people are going, oh my God, how do you do this in Tinkercad? Yes, am I pushing the boundaries of Tinkercad? Yes, does Tinkercad often take a long time for that project to load because all of the parts? But I can't really claim any greatness on Tinkercad because if you really want to get blown away about Tinkercad, there's a project that is a Sopwith Camel, and it is down to every nut and bolt and dial and knob and piston. The engine is fully rendered inside the structure. It literally is down
That's
to every.
excessive.
It's absolutely, and it's all color correct. It's a really beautiful model, all done in Tinkercad.
They've got a lot more time on their hands than I do.
So yeah, but speaking of time, yeah. So this has evolved over 4 years now through generation through to now generation 6, improving the cooling ducts. We've continued to go back to computational fluid dynamics to match the airflow. In fact, one of the big updates in Gen 6 was we actually increased the output duct size by 50%, which reduced the back pressure, allowed for a more laminar airflow. So a great improvement there.
How are you running CFD? Because CFD is not possible inside of Tinkercad. Are you
No.
downloading
There's
STLs and running it somewhere?
there's a free open source application that you can run, and so we go and take the SDLs, load them up into that app, which I forget the name of it right now, but
if someone knows, to toss it in the comments because I'm curious.
Sure,
CFD
yeah.
is one of those things that I've always wanted to try, but I've always said, here, I have a friend that does it really well. I'm like, here, just can you just run this for me?
Yeah,
Please, because I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, because you need to learn about, okay, there's an input port and there's an output port, and you've got to set it up correctly in there, and then you give it the airflow, and you can actually then model how the air is flowing out and in what direction, and you can then have the nozzle and the hot end rendered so you can see how the air flows around the nozzle and below the nozzle.
Right.
So yeah, these are all computationally validated, and of course then real world printed validated that do we actually get great parts from printing these ducts. So by standardizing the mount for the fans, you can have all different types of fan types. So I support 50-15, I support 40-20, 40-10s, 50-20s. If someone comes out with some new radial fan, what I don't do, and what people ask, oh, will you give me a mod that'll let me put on my 40-10 or 40-20 Noctua axial fan?
Axials, yeah.
And I'm going, no, you don't get it. There is not enough static pressure created by this. And the whole point with Noctuas, the reason they're silent is because they lower the RPM. So you're not going to get good cooling. And that's why while in the case of the stock fans, the 40-10 radial fan that comes standard with all these printers is not sufficient for one side, let alone two. I do make the ducts because people complained, hey, I need something until I can order it in. Right. So I do have ducts for the 40-10s, but I do not recommend them. They just don't generate enough air pressure.
I mean, to further agree with you there, I've got a Noctua 40-20 cooling a Titan Aero, but the part cooling fan is up here is a 50-15.
Yeah, so
because, the radials give you that back pressure and that static pressure that you need.
Yeah, so for cooling the heatsink, 40-10, 40-20 axial's fine. Plenty of air. Prusa's proven that for years. It just works. Little 5-volt blowing the air across there. But for the parts, no. And my standard rig, this particular one I've been showing off here, is actually a pair of 40-20s. But I don't run 40-20s. I run a pair of 50-15s. The reason this one is that I needed to prove it and test it and show that it works.
To be smaller, right?
Yeah.
Just to be more compact.
Yeah, and so but yeah, all of the designs follow the same format you see here. And the other key thing is Now, different ducts from different guys, whether it be David or Eva or whatever, their duct tips shapes are different. But for everything about the Hiromi, it's all designed to be 1.6 millimeters off the bed when the nozzle's touching the bed. And that makes the duct shape, because they're also angled downward so that the airflow is right below the tip onto the part. So we don't want to be cooling the nozzle or the hot end itself.
Right.
Right.
That's a problem with the stock Lulzbot. I have a TAS 6, and the TAS 6 uses two big axial fans. They're 40 tens? Yeah, 40 tens. The problem is that it cools the hot end so damn much, you had to put a sock on it, but they don't make socks for the hexagon hot end. So you had to 3D print the mold and make your own. Hilariously, one of our staff made that mold years and years ago before he was a staff member of ours. We have a question from the 4th J in the comments. Have you considered doing a cooler with a Peltier device? I know the answer to this. Well, I know the answer why it won't work, but I don't know if you've ever considered it.
I did see a system out there, prototype. I looked at. No, have I put any energy into it? I have not.
You would need so much power.
Yeah.
For Peltier, because Peltiers are so inefficient. You'd probably need 200 to 300 watts to give yourself enough cooling continuously, because of course you're going to blow air past it to cool it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, then you're just chilling the air. It's like an intercooler on a car. That's not going to do anything for 3D printing. I don't think colder air is going to help out. I mean, ultimately, even warm air is fine. It's the convection that's the cooling method, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So so the whole point about the Hiromi was providing options. I mean, some people freak out when they see it because it's a whole lot. I'm now over 350 parts. What's published out there on Thingiverse and printables and Cults 3D, etc., is about 320 parts. I've got another 30 parts ready to push, and it's grown over the years simply because of the requests that come in. So, oh, I've got this hot end that you don't support. Can you support it? Oh, I've got this direct drive. Can you support that? And so that's how it's grown. And the only way that's made it possible to manage the thing was the fact that we've got these standards, right? Everything has a standard connection mount. Then all I have to change is, there's some new fan. I adapt the part cooling duct. Oh, gee, there's some new hot end. Okay, adapt the inside of the Hiromi base to however that piece mounts. And getting the Sherpa. I probably had the first supported cooling system for the Sherpa Micro because I saw it being announced and had it done 2 hours later. Because they had a sample of the mount points for how the Sherpa Micro was gonna attach. I downloaded that model and was able to make mods to support it literally within 2 hours. So
that's pretty great. And when you're working with companies that are producing brand new hot ends, like when the Revo came out, I'm guessing you're probably in the beta.
No, actually, I wasn't. I ordered and got one in one of the first production runs, but I wasn't. But I did get the step file and made sure that things were compatible. In fact, what I've just yesterday made some updates. I had done a prototype Hiromi base for the Revo Micro, that's got its threaded neck, right? And one of my users tested it, and the threads I had were just too tight. She actually broke the part twice. And so someone sent me a message saying, hey, E3D has posted the threads onto printables. So last night I went and downloaded their step file for the collar that they posted and was able to expand that in and put it in there. And last night sent off to 2 users a new version of the part that would now match because it was using actually E3D's spec for it. That's the thing is I as much as possible try and pull from the factory specs. Correct. Oftentimes I'll get a request for a new printer and there is no X carriage. I mean, no step file, no STF file. And they haven't put it on GitHub. They haven't released it on their website. And so what I need to do is I ask, take a couple of photos front and back, and then get your calipers out and measure every hole from center to center. And, I needed probably about 15 or 20 measurements, depending on how many holes there are, that I then take and I remodel that X carriage in Tinkercad to then make the gantry adapter to fit on it, and then send it back to that user for validation testing. Okay, did it work? Tweak whatever and get it. But, if I'm lucky, and probably about 30-40% of the time, somebody can point me to a step or an STL file of an X carriage to do it. So,
do you think your experience in the UX industry has really benefited your thought processes for designing something like this?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is my career has been a lot around how do you work with a computer? How do you interface with some new control or interface? I was involved in point-of-purchase kiosks development at Atari, where we created a thing called ERIC, Electronic Information Retail Center. And it's where, it was a display system to help sell Atari 800 computers. And it was an interactive Laserdisc. And so we had an interface there. From that, after leaving Atari, I went to a company called Weimart, where we created point-of-purchase kiosks to help sell software. And our business was that we created a Laserdisc every month where we had reviewed all the latest software, and these kiosks went into Sears and Ward's stores to be the salesman, because the salespeople didn't know anything about computers. So you could watch a 3 or 4 minute demo, and this was right about the time that ATM machines, that you get a credit card like card, and you go to the bank and put it in a machine and get money out, right? And they standardized on that 9 keypad. Well, we adapted that 9 keypad technology into an interface to be able to select from menus. So yeah, my UX experience goes way back. My web development experience, doing websites for Fortune 500 for high-tech firms. Then it really kicked off in about 2000 when about the dot-com bust, right? You're old enough to know about the dot-com bust.
I was born in 1990, so I'm young, but I'm not that old.
So in the late 90s, I was doing probably 80-90% of Merlin Media, which is my company then, business in high tech for Silicon Valley, and about 10-15% was doing college and nonprofit and that sort of thing.
Right.
I fortunately, a year before the bust, connected up with a woman who had a research company doing research for community colleges, 2-year and technical schools. And she needed a firm to do the website development from the research they'd done for these colleges. So I got involved in doing web design work for higher education. Mm-hmm. And the dot-com bust happened, and literally in a year, I saved my company because we were able to transition from 90-10 high-tech to 90-10 education. And from 2000 to 2008, did hundreds of college websites. And that's where I also got involved in being involved in web accessibility, making websites accessible for those who are differently abled, blind, hard of hearing, motor skills, etc. So that whole UI UX now goes one step further about how you make something usable to those who may not have the same skills that you do to access that information. So yeah, those things very, very much have influenced how I designed this thing and wanted to make it so that it was repeatable, configurable, modifiable, and honestly, easy on me to make new versions when some new thing came out, because I already had a template with which to adapt something to. So yes, can somebody make a more compact cooling system for a single printer, a single hot end, a single direct drive? Sure, they're out there, right? But can someone make one that is more universally acceptable and does great and maybe has a few more parts? I don't think anyone could. And that's the same philosophy that the guy who does the EVA one for Core XY is modularity. It's all about modularity. And if he hasn't got it, you can go and get that design and then make your own mod adaptation. So with that, because of that, there are now over 600 remixes and add-ons for the
Wow.
Hiromi environment on Thingiverse alone. I haven't, gone out to count all the others on different places, but on Thingiverse, there's over 600 remixes where somebody had something they either I was busy or they just said, oh hey, here's the stuff, and they just went out and made it and reprinted it, and I collect and have my own Hiromi collection of all the remixes I can find, because again, it's open source. We can make it better
It's
for
kind of
each
cool
other.
to see that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We got the
So yeah.
we have the fourth J asking, can I buy direct a nozzle cooler for my Ender 3? You don't sell them pre-done and all that, do you?
I don't yet. I'm currently discussing with a company who is a print farm that may want to offer Hiromi kits. So that may be coming. The other thing I'm in early discussions on is I had somebody say, hey, you ought to make this out of milled aluminum.
Okay.
And so we're thinking about maybe doing this in milled aluminum, but that's a very, very early discussion.
Could you get
But
away with 3-axis? I think you have to use 4-axis for that.
Yeah, yeah. So again, like I say, it's simply a concept at this point. I haven't
Yeah.
actually go, gee, what is it going to take to do it, and would it make financial sense to do it? But to the point of, can you go and buy a set? Actually, you probably know Tim from TH3D.
Yeah. I know Tim.
Yeah, so Tim and I had discussions about them doing kits, but his concern was I was always updating it and adding more and more and more. And when it got to a couple of hundred parts, he's going, I can't deal with that inventory.
Yeah, I mean that's the same problem the Voron community has, but the Voron community also doesn't let their vendors know when they're making changes. But I digress, because that is one of the most frustrating things.
So the thing is though, probably about Gen 4 is when I standardized on all this. Things got locked in place. And so any parts for Gen 4 will fit on a Gen 6. Any parts for Gen 6 will print on a Gen 4. They're forward and backward compatible because of these standard mount points. And so I've had people ask a lot of times, well, I've already got a Gen 5 Hiromi. Should I upgrade to a 6? Well, the answer is maybe. I would definitely recommend that you reprint the part cooling duct, because there's a huge improvement in Gen 6 part cooling over Gen 5. So at least just reprint the part cooling duct. But one of the things that people have correctly complained about is when they need to do maintenance. You've seen on Facebook and Discord the blob, right? Somebody has a failure and you get this huge blob.
Blob of doom.
Right?
That's right.
Blob of doom, right? I actually have a cool little meme card that I post congratulating them for reaching level 5 of the 3D printers. I don't even know what my own card says, but I've got these 15
it's part of the
steps.
induction to the industry,
Yes,
right?
Yes, right.
It's
everybody. It'll happen to everybody once, at least.
You'll pinch your fingers in a pair of needle nose pliers. You'll burn yourself on a hot end. You'll touch a hot nozzle. You'll deal with snapped filament. You'll deal with filament stuck in a heat break, which is truly one of the worst places for filament to get stuck. I'm trying.
I go on.
Broken thermistor cables.
Yeah. Have you printed 10 benchies? That's the one people say, I've never printed a benchie, and I'm proud of it.
I print a few of them. Back in the day when they first came out, of course, because I do so much modeling and testing, I've got to make sure my printers are all tweaked in, and I probably have 300 benchies. I've got a cabinet up above that's got a big bucket full of all my benchies. That's my standard. I've used Chep cubes and that sort of thing, but because I have to deal with overhangs and cooling on different sides, the Benchy is a great model for me to test against. Right.
But yeah, so there's this huge ecosystem now of the Hiromi of hundreds of parts and add-ons. So people have dial gauges and they want to check their bed level with that. So there's an add-on to put a dial gauge on the front. Somebody's got some unique different ABL sensor, the Touch Me and the TA sensor, and of course, it support Pinda and Easy ABLs and CR touches and VL touches and all that. But all the whole environment is modular, and you can do so. You can get away with just three pieces: the gantry adapter, the Hiromi base, and the fan duct. But if you then want an ABL, it may be one or two more parts for the ABL mount. And yeah, so it's anywhere from 3 to 6 parts that's needed for any given setup. I did a calculation last year that of all the possible combinations, and it came out to over 6 million. I think now it would be over 10 million. You know, so
Just a few, just a few. Um, we've got Draw Sleep Repeat in the comments asking, where did the name Hero Me come from? I believe you talked about that it was from the Marcelino Marquesa, right?
yeah, and honestly, I don't know. He had before that, it was Hero A Pipe S, and then that was a fixed all-in-one, nothing adjustable. It was a single thing that held the hot end, held the part cooling fan, held the fan for the heat sink, and that was it. And from there, with the feedback I gave him, I said I need to have adjustability. What if I have a different hot end? That he then created the very first gen of the Hero Me, and I may have asked him at some point, but I don't know the history. That's something that has gone to time, and it's just, you know, people recognize it. You know, if you search Google, you're either going to get a band that, you know, says, you know, they're the Hero or Hero Me, or you're going to get this. So it's unique.
Well, all right, so now we have to come up with a story arc. We have to come up with a good solution here, something that like maybe Michael Bay would pick up and turn into a movie, or Guillermo del Toro would turn into something. So we've Dominic Versetto says, I wish the Hero Me didn't cost so much of the Y volume on the Ender 5. And that,
Okay.
that
Okay.
is
So let me answer that. It actually doesn't. Okay. It doesn't. All right. And people go, oh, because I have an Ender 5 Plus. All right. I have an Ender 5 Plus.
Yeah.
And yep, when you add the Hero Me with dual 5015s and you run it up there, it hits the front rail. Right. Guess what, guys? Don't you also wish you could see that first layer going down? There are multiple things on Thingiverse to move that crossbar down 40 millimeters. Problem solved. So you literally just move that front crossbar down 40 millimeters. No structural rigidity is lost. You now have visibility of the first layer going down, and no Y loss for the Hero Me.
Yeah, we're not talking Ender 7 levels of adjustment from a Joel Telling video.
No. And so you can either use the metal, 90-degree angle brackets. You can go get those from Amazon, or there are literally 4 or 5 different Thingiverse projects of ways of either through one part or multiple parts. Simply move that front 2020 extrusion down by 40 millimeters. Problem solved.
We had an Ender 5 Plus in the shop for a while. It's actually how I met Tim. We had found a bug in the TH3D firmware that kept it from compiling on AMD processors. My laptop was an AMD processor. And Tim was a great guy, jumped on with me live on one of my live streams trying to fix it. And we go through it, and he's like, all right, I know what the problem is. Let me work on it. He said, you'll probably end the stream, but let me get with you after the stream and we'll do it. And literally, he spent like 2 hours with me diagnosing this printer, and was not a big fan of that printer, to be honest. It squeaked so much. The Z-axis was so damn loud, and I oiled the sin out of that thing, and I could not get it to a point where I felt comfortable like leaving it in anywhere other than my garage. It wasn't my printer, it was a client's printer, but it was still one of those, God, that thing is annoying.
So there's actually, the Ender 5 Plus is a hidden jewel. Let me tell you why.
Is it?
All right. The Voron 2.4, big deal, right? Guys are going out and building Vorons left and right. Well, okay, but they want a really cool Core XY. They want to go for speed benchies, whatever, right? And they'll spend about $2,000 to build a Voron 300 by 300 by 300.
Right.
Right. Buy an Ender 5 Plus, $550, and you go and get James Tung's Core XY upgrade kit. James is a buddy of mine. He, in fact, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but he and I were, in fact, the designers behind the Mutant for Wham Bam. I worked on the mobile plate. He did the uh, 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 base plate, and he actually also has done cooling systems. Kind of competed with the Hero Me, and we ended up finding out about each other while we were in the middle of working with Wham Bam on the Mutant. He's now done a full Core XY upgrade for the Ender 5 Pro, and he's just finishing up all the stuff for what we call the Raptor. That's going to be the name. The Raptor is a Core XY upgrade, about $200 in parts plus printing the parts.
Yeah.
So for $700-800, you've got a large Core XY system out of an Ender 5 versus doing a Voron. And there's also someone else who's done a fix for the Z that you talk about. So that's the nice thing about the Ender 3 series and the Ender 5 series is they're great platforms to just tinker and rebuild on, right?
I mean, clearly the i3 in general has been a pretty good platform. I mean, obviously, Prusa utilizes it, Creality, Wanhao, Voxel Lab, all the major manufacturers right now have an i3 style printer out for some variant of it one way or another. It's funny to me to look back at like the printer I lit on fire, a Wanhao Duplicator i3, and looking at like an yeah, like an Ender 3 and saying, "Wow, we really did we went down. We didn't go up." Cuz like the Wanhaos, they're not great printers, but boy, they were actually built pretty well. The big bearing blocks and you know,
Right.
there were some things about like, huh.
So they were the first
something
with
right.
ribbon cables for the X carriage. All the wiring is a ribbon cable. The current trend on integrated extruder hot ends. The Hemera, the BIQ H2, the Creality S1,
Right.
the Bondtech LGX Sidekick. All of these that are a extruder hot end integrated. Well, guess what? Who did it first? Wanhao. The i3 is exactly that way.
It has a Mark 8 direct drive. And it's so funny to me that we didn't continue down that path because that whole system is like stupid simple.
Yeah.
There isn't like a real physical heat sink that your filament passes through. It's a block of aluminum with a heat sink stuck onto it. And when I was doing that video, it reminded me of how bloody annoying those printers were sometimes to take apart. It shows where we've cut corners to bring the price down. Do you find that adding a Hero Me kind of starts people in that realm of, all right, I know I bought a cheap printer, but I want to make it a better printer. What are some of the other upgrades that you see people doing alongside of that?
The linear rails, putting linear rails on enders. So 3D Fused makes a good linear rail kit. Sure, you can get them from AliExpress, etc. But 3D Fused has a good, and whether it be in Y, X, or Z. I actually have a behind my screen here a Ender extender, a 500 millimeter Ender 3 Plus with linear rails, and so there's that sort of thing. Obviously, there's lots and lots of mods cosmetically to where the display go, move the power supply underneath, etc. But the ones that I would suggest for an Ender besides the Hero Me, of course, would be flex plate.
Oh gosh, yes.
Again, Wham Bam I think is the way to go on a flex plate.
Agreed.
Yes, there are others out there. The Creality's own flex plate is a really cheap knockoff. The magnet is not very strong, and the flex is not really a spring steel sheet. Changing out the springs and the dials to be solid silicon. All my printers now have solid standoffs. I've never in 2 years touched a dial. So once you get the bed level, they just stay that way. That's how a Prusa is. It's sitting rock solid on metal standoffs.
But they have automatic bed leveling, right? Where that for me accounts for any frame slop, right? Like my shelves are not flat. They're industrial shelves. They got kind of a bow to them. And so there is naturally going to be some frame slop involved in that.
But that's the thing is that over time, spring-based systems are going to, that bed's moving around. That bed slinger is going back and forth.
Yep.
You have to retune those. I find that if you put the silicone washers in there and tighten it way down, it stays lock solid just like the Prusa. And yeah, you have to get it, level correct once, dial it in once, but set it and forget it. And yes, if you've got a printer that doesn't have an ABL, I haven't touched a piece of paper to level in forever.
It's been a minute.
The two biggest mods that saved the most amount of time was flex plate, no more scraping, and the fixed bed mounts, so no more adjusting and with the ABL. So
yeah, I won't go back to no flex plates. I am putting flex plates on all of our resin printers because, of course, we had Peter Solomon from Wham Bam on a couple of months ago, and actually he gave us a coupon code in that video. It's code Musketeers. It gives 10% off at Wham Bam through the end of May 2022. So like 1 week left on that. And I enjoyed that. And of course, we're involved with Peter on some business level things, but you've also been helping out on the Mutant side. But before you get too far into the Mutant, we do have a comment or a question from Draw Sleep Repeat saying, what fans do you recommend for upgrades on the Ender 3/Aquila?
Okay, so my go-to, in fact, all my printers from Enders are upgraded with dual 5015s, and I use the light. So I've got a bunch of different ducts, but the ones that are called lightweight. So it's a separate duct for the left and the right. We got one on each side. I use the lightweight ducts that are forward and braced. And what does that mean? It means that the body's moved a little bit forward towards you on the front so that a BL touch or a CR touch can fit behind, so it can get as close to the nozzle so that the mesh can be more accurate. And the brace version is, you can see here on this, there's just one mount for the fan. Well, the brace version brings out and allows you to bolt on to the back screw. The problem is that I had over the generations with both fans and nuts. So the issue why we went to threaded inserts, well, the only thing standard about an M3 nut is the threads. The shape of the nut and the thickness of the nut and size, there is no standard. And so I tried to build this, pocket to put a nut in that would be captive.
Oh boy, yeah.
And either it was too small or too large. People, it's dropping out. And I'm going, it works for me. Well, that's because the particular nuts that I bought were of a certain size, and that's what I designed for. Same thing with fans. 4020s, 5015s, they're not all 15 millimeters wide. Some of them are 14.4, some of them are almost 16 millimeters wide. So I've had to make the input slot be able to be flexible enough to deal with both. So with that, when there's only one screw, it is captive so that it's actually clipped. It won't come out with the one screw.
Right.
But if you're moving around a lot, there can be some vibration noise. Some people solve that with a little bead of silicone on the edge, but I've solved it since by remodeling this. Again, it's all about listening to your users and improving on it from their feedback. So these ducts now have two mount points to lock solid the fan in. So 5015s. And speaking of 5015s, what fans? My recommendation, if you can get them, but they're very hard to find, would be Sun On maglevs.
Yep. 100% agree.
Great fan. Or a Delta. Both of them run $10 to $15 a piece, but they're hard to get. But with that said, probably 60-70% of my machines run on Winsons. I get on Amazon, but it's a particular Winson. You want to make sure it says brushless sealed dual ball bearing. Brushless sealed dual ball bearing. You want that version. If you see the word hydraulic in the description, you don't want that version.
They're sleeves, or They're just bushings. They're using like a phosphor
Right.
bronze bushing.
Right.
I,
So you can get two Winson 5015s, you know, for $9 off of Amazon. Sometimes you can get it for $7 or $8. And yeah, I have those on most of my
and
machines.
they'll last
Uh,
forever.
and they last forever. Yeah.
Yeah,
And because again, I don't run them at full speed, so they don't whine. You know, they're whisper quiet.
I'm looking for any like non-attached 5015s. Like I'm sure, yeah, these are all crap. They're all sleeve bearings, and I, when you're doing prototyping, sleeve bearings are fine. Just know at some point you're gonna have to peel off that sticker, put a little drop of oil in there because it's gonna be
Yeah.
so damn loud. That's the thing. Like Prusas don't use or they use sleeve bearings. They don't use ball bearings, so that will be a future upgrade for me. But I got to find the 3-wire fan rather than the 2-wire fan, which is what
Yep.
like
Yep.
95% of all other fans are.
Yeah.
But we were talking a little bit earlier about Wham Bam. You have a fair bit of experience because you were a designer or part
Yeah.
of the design team for the Mutant.
I actually was a customer of Wham Bam, and I bought the first generation Mutant and used it, and found that the standard hole patterns, you know, because I was then going to want to adapt the Hero Me for it,
Right.
and the standard holes that he had in that first generation didn't work. He also found, obviously, there were manufacturing issues with that first generation,
Right.
which do not exist in Gen 2.
Can
It's
confirm.
totally different product. But because I was vocal and giving feedback, he contracted to me because I had all these different models of printers and not only physically on them, but also had collected up all of these X carriage models. And lots of different hot ends this pattern that is in the mobile plate for mounting all of the gear.
Mm-hmm.
That's my design work. So I was contracted to do that. So I got to work on the Mutant V2. I love it. I have it on all my printers. And the thing about the Mutant, it's very straightforward to add it to an Ender 3 or to practically any printer out there,
Right.
except Prusa.
Well,
But no. So the thing is, the reason is what makes Prusa unique in this sense. Prusa, in a sense, is kind of like Apple. They are vertically integrated. They even though the firmware is open source, they have their version of the firmware, and they build the hardware. They even manufacture the filament, right? So they've got the whole thing soup to nuts.
right.
Well, the reason they could sell kits, you know, Prusas are hundreds of parts, right? How can you sell a kit and keep the tech support low? All right, because someone's going to build it wrong and complain. Well, the way they do that is they've got
easy to read.
they've got all of these built-in calibration tests. Is the bed askew? Is the bed level? There's all these calibration tests.
Yep.
And that's what actually prevents a whole lot of feedback. If it's failing the calibration test, the documentation, the manual helps you work it out. Well, because of these calibration tests, Prusa knows exactly where that nozzle and that pin to probe is any given time, right?
Right.
And so if something changes about the geometry, it's going to fail those tests. Well, guess what? A Mutant is 30 millimeters wider than the carriage is for a Prusa. And that instantly makes it wrong for homing X. The Mutant is a good 15 millimeters more up front, so it's moving the nozzle further up front in the board. So it instantly fails all these tests.
Yep.
Well, I've got 4 Prusas. I wanted to use the Mutant on my Prusas because also, my opinion is, Prusas are the workhorse for print farms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because they just work, right? In fact, until the Mutant, I've never modified any of my Prusas. I've modified all my other printers, but I had not modified the Prusas. They just worked.
We make like quality of life modifications. Like when I always buy the kits, we install a Y-axis tensioner that is right underneath the screen. You can just put an Allen key.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
That's like it. And I'll change out some of the colors so I can, verify what printers upset at me at what time. But yeah, otherwise they are like for the movement systems, bone stock.
So my point was with this is that I wanted to bring the Mutant to the Prusa.
Right.
Well, okay. Why would you have a Mutant in the first place? There's two trains of thought. You've got a completely different type of hot end system. You want to swap that out. Maybe you want to turn your printer into a vinyl cutter. You want to turn it into a cake icing extruder. You want to be able to put it into a pen plotter, right? Change out the hot end, the whole hot end assembly, and you got a completely different device. The other side is on the light industrial side. All right. So what is the one drawback from from a light industrial manufacturing perspective about the Prusa? It's pain in the butt to repair when something goes wrong in the hot end. You got to take that printer offline for several hours, right? So the whole point with a Mutant is you can swap out the hot end, the whole assembly, in 15 seconds, and you're back up and running, right?
I've definitely never swapped hot ends mid-print. Nope, never done that.
No, not mid-print, not mid-print.
Oh, I've done it mid-print.
Yeah, but I mean, in a production, if something fails, right?
Yeah.
Something fails in the hot end, whether it's a block or physical, part failure. To get at that, the whole printer has to come offline. And the whole idea here with the Mutant is that you can keep that thing
Just
back in
swap
production
it and then deal with it
24/7, right?
Yeah.
So that was my goal was, gee, what could I do? So I spent several weeks working on the geometry, understanding the geometry of the Prusa, and came up with an upgrade that I call the Prusa Mutant. And it's an upgrade to take a Prusa to be able to put a Mutant on it and have it just work. No firmware mods, because that's a big deal for print farms.
Yeah. Yep, I don't want
to. No loss of build space, zero loss of build space, and just works. And so what is it I do? Is I found that I created the brackets that hold the Z-axis threaded rods get moved out 15 millimeters on each side. All right. Oh. So that takes care of the 30 millimeters wider. All right. 2, on the Y, because this thing sticks forward 15 millimeters, I've now got adapters in the frame of the Prusa to pad 15 millimeters. So it's like moving the bed 15 millimeters. And no belts change. The belts stay the same.
Right.
Because I have an adapter pad behind the Y-axis motor mount that moves it up so you don't have to change the belt. The only thing beside my printed parts that you need to buy are the 2 linear rods on the X-axis. Because I moved it out 30 millimeters, you need to get 2 rods that are 30 millimeters longer each. That and my upgrade of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10, 12 parts. And the Prusa geometry is modded, but from Prusa software, it doesn't know the difference. It is exactly the same. And so now, it's possible to add a Mutant to a Prusa to be able to have that same hot swap capability.
It's interesting. So from like a print farm business perspective, we just have extra machines. And I know that, in the email chat, you said that's an issue for some businesses because they don't want the $1,000 asset sitting idle. I would rather have a $1,000 asset sitting idle and have extra capabilities than be scrambling to fix a printer on a deadline. Because printers will be perfect until you have an oh shit they needed it yesterday deadline, and that is only when they break.
So $150 and 2 hours of labor instead of the $1,000.
I mean, yes, that's fair. In my defense, this was all well before the Mutant V2 was a thing, but
Sure. Right.
It is something that we will be looking at. My plan was to always put a Mutant on, like I have some Ender 3 clones that I got for next to nothing, and that was always the plan because I like the Prusas the way they are. And it's one of those like these are the machines that make me money, right? This is how we keep the channel alive. Let's mess with the ones that don't keep the channel alive.
But one of the other quality of life things is that now I can work on this failed hot end system.
Oh my gosh, that is
on my workbench without that whole printer stuck around me. I mean, that's a quality of life thing as well.
that is a massive quality of life thing, and we will be doing Revo upgrades. I have to burn through some of my stock of V6 components, but like our main time lapse printer, the one right there. That one, there's Tuesday's time lapse. Spoiler alert. That will get a Revo because it's better for the company to be, tagging E3D
Yeah,
and stuff.
I have now 3 Revos.
They're
I've
so
got it installed in one
nice.
machine. I'm going to spread it around. I like I have been historically V6 standards
Yeah.
throughout, and now the Revo. I do have some. I've got a Dyes Extruder Pro. I've got a Hamera. Both are not mounted on any printer at the moment, but. I basically standardized on either BMGs or LGXs
Yep.
for extruders. I do have, and I'm excited about the Orbiter V2. So
I
I'm
gotta
looking
get
forward.
one. They look so good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited about the Orbiter V2. But yeah, that with a Revo 6 and being able to cold swap the nozzle and not ever have a problem leaking because of the whole, is that nozzle tight against the heat break, etc. That problem just goes away. And you just see that over and over again, on Facebook, on Twitter, elsewhere. Gee, why am I seeing leaking, plastic over the hot end? Well, because you didn't tighten it down while it was hot.
Yeah, we have the longest running weekly print fix video series on YouTube, and the amount of fails that I see happen every single week continuously, it's like I can only talk about a leaky nozzle so many times. I say, all right, we've talked about it 3 times in the past 2 months. We're going to
Yeah.
ignore these fails for 3 months, and then they'll come back. So we have like
Yeah.
this rotation of,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, we're going to ignore these for a bit because, yeah, no offense to
That's
people in
the other
this
thing
industry,
is that
but
it
you all don't look for shit.
it's easy to find the solution. Whether it be Google or Facebook searches or whatever.
Right.
These things are talked about over and over again as to how to solve this. That do a little bit of homework and you'll find the answers are out there. Or 3D Printing General in his book. He's got a great book. All of these hundreds of different failures and fixes for them.
Yep. I've never read the book, but I have heard about it. People have talked about it in the comments. I think we got to get him on as a guest and kind of talk to him about that, because that book, I'm told, is quite helpful. And the world of Hero Me, right? Your system, it's not going anywhere. Where do you see this in the next couple of years? Are you going to maintain full open source? What's the plan here?
Okay, so a couple of things have changed recently, and a couple of things are coming down the pipe. So yeah, I've put thousands of hours, design hours in. I've put hundreds of hours into answering questions. I created a 55-page parts cross-reference and assembly guide. And then in January, I took that off of Thingiverse. I need a way to find a way to earn some income from this thing. Hero Me, all the STLs, all the parts will always be open source. They are open source. That's spec'd by Kilo Care back at the beginning, and none of that changes. Hero Me stuff, it will always be open source. But my knowledge and my documentation, that has value. And so think of it, if you're in the computer world, you know about Linux and you know about Red Hat. Linux is free, but if you want to have support and documentation, you pay Red Hat, right? Well, Hero Me is free. And by the way, all the file namings have been updated such that, yeah, there's 300 plus parts. But if you, unfortunately, Thingiverse is broken again. What else is new?
Yeah, I know.
But
This is news.
They used to allow you to have a zip file, right? And you could post a zip file and in it, because Thingiverse isn't really well designed to deal with hundreds of parts.
No, see, you missed that. It's not well designed. Just stop there.
Because it becomes overwhelming looking at that long list. Well, I have organized all of the components, whether it be gantry adapters, hot ends, fans, by model, by type, into folders and subfolders. It's very well organized. The file names are adjusted. And so if you go to Cults 3D and search for Hero Me, I have it there as a single zip. as nested folders in that zip, so it's very well organized.
That's
Same
nice.
thing on printables. You know, if you go to prusasprintables.com, it's all there. You can download a single zip, and it's all folder based. The only unfortunate thing about printables is it's not nested folders. You're just going to get a whole bunch of folders in the one zip, whereas the zip I put on Cults 3D is all nicely nested by topic and subtopic.
Have you reached out to as people at printables to get that? Because they'll actually make those changes, which is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
no, I do need to give that feedback. I haven't done that yet, and I'm going to give them mine as an example. But so I took the documentation and went to Patreon, and so as a way that, you know, if you want my documentation, you want my help, you can get it for as little as $2. That's all you have to spend, $2 and cancel, and you get the docs. If you can afford a 3D printer and you want to use the HeroMe, I don't think $2 is too much to ask.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not, right? This whole industry, unfortunately, and I say this with a grain of salt, unfortunately was designed and founded upon open source. And that means that the people in it have an expectation to get things for free. And all of a sudden they want people to spend their time.
Grant, I want to come to your place and I want you to print stuff for me for free.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Right.
Not gonna happen.
Right.
If you want to come to my place, bring a printer, bring your own filament, you just want to hang out, by all means, go ahead. I don't give a damn. But yeah, we had a gentleman ask us to do a 6-foot-tall 3D print in less than a month. And I said, well, what's your budget? We have $1,400. I said, you can get no, absolutely not. I won't even, I said, if you can't put $5,000 down, I'm not even going to quote the job, because you're talking 3 to 4 months on one printer to get it done. And don't get me wrong, we have 13 printers in our farm. It's no big deal to knock this thing out in a month.
Right.
But $1,400, it's going to be $600 to $700 in raw materials.
Yes.
Not happening.
Yes. So yeah, so I have Patreon, and I know you got it linked down there. Thank you very much.
Yep, of course. Go join the Patreon.
So you know, you can get the docs for just $2. You also, at higher levels, $3, $5, $10 can get at support from me. You can get it on my Discord server, and we've got a very active. We've got about 300 people on Discord server that not only do I answer the questions, but they also help each other. And I've got now, this is now the 22nd of May. I started it January 11th, so that's 4 months and a week. I've got 1,860 patrons. I've got, have I seen complaints on Facebook and elsewhere saying, oh, gee, he's now, you know, gone the money route. I'll never touch it again. Your choice, you know, make your choice. But I don't think $2 is too much to ask for. Yeah. And I've had actually a whole lot of my patrons come to my defense and writing, hey, you got it wrong. It's worth it. He's active. He supports it. He does it. He updates it.
Yep.
And I've actually, I want to thank you to all of my patrons. You are blowing me away every day. It continues to grow. It's just, the last 4 months have been just phenomenal, and have been busier than heck for me, because now I'm getting a lot more requests, and I have some due to my patrons. I'm currently, the other thing, it's coming. I'm doing a major rewrite on the documentation that will probably be about twice as long as it currently is. I'm trying to get that finished, so that's coming. I know you've heard me say several times, the next few days.
Hey, soon TM is
that
happens here.
I'm dyslexic, and writing for me takes a long time. So I'm on it, and I'm working on it. But yeah, so where's the Hear Me going? Will there be a Gen 7? Yes, there'll probably be a Gen 7. When something significant enough changes that can improve, there'll be a Gen 7. In the meantime, there are updates that I do probably every 2 weeks for Gen 6 of improvements. New. I just added the G-Tech A series, A10 2030. I just added the ZL Tech printer. There's several new printers that just got added support for.
Wait, there's ZL Tech has their own printer?
Yeah, there is one. Yep.
I don't know these things. I see. God, I've been so caught up in. Oh, they have an Ender 3, but I'm like, did they come up with a different printer? No, they have like an Ender 3 and a
The
CR-10
name
clone
of it is. Let me open it up
on their
here.
website because now it's gonna bother me.
Uh,
Their gear printer.
the Gear 3. Yep, yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, is there one that I don't know about? It kind of screwed me up a little bit. Yeah, I want to go back to the Patreon thing because
Yep.
it is a major frustration for me, and I'm happy to take any flack that people have for this because it's a frustration that I have voiced quite a few times. The fact that people expect everything to go out for free and that they expect us as, the content creators, like you're technically a content creator, just you make files, I make videos. They expect us to spend every waking minute of our time supporting and all of this, and they're not going to kick a couple of bucks to the creator fund. Like, my Patreon's down in the description too. If people like what we do here, I say it at the end of every video, support us on Patreon. If you like what Andy does and you like Hero Me and you've printed Hero Me, give the guy $2 damn. Like, honestly, $2. You can't get a cup of coffee with that these days. You can't. You could maybe get a tiny can of Mountain Dew, but you ain't getting a whole lot more. You can't get a gallon of gas for that. You can't go to the grocery store and back home unless you live real close to a grocery store for $2. It ain't happening, Chief. And $2, which may not sound like a lot. Every time you get that email saying so-and-so just pledged $2 on Patreon, it validates the work that we are doing as creators. It says people give a shit, right? I can see subscriber counts going up. Cool, we're doing something right. We see Patreon go up every now and then. Hey, we're doing something right. And for creators that are just physical products, right? The files and things like that, Patreon is really one of the only ways to support them. And it's nice. It's $2 a month. Patreon takes it out every single month. You don't got to worry about it. And if you pay up front, I think you're offering 15% off for the year.
Yep.
Guys, it's like $20 for the whole damn year.
Yeah.
Right? Pay the guy. Honestly, if you've downloaded his files, kick him $2. It makes the world of difference to creators to understand that their work has value to people. And guess what? We have bills too. We all have bills to pay. I will get off my soapbox now because we do have a comment from Asker Vesper. Oh, I'm going to screw that up. All right. Asker. We're going to go with that. No, sorry. Draw, Sleep, Repeat asks, what slicer do you use? Asker replied with Prusa Slicer and Idea Maker. But what slicer do you use the most, Andy?
I use Prusa Slicer. I probably the most. I use Super Slicer at times. There's some things that's got some nice calculations in it that Prusa hasn't done yet. But I still have S3D. I maybe open it once a quarter.
That sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've got probably all the other slicers out there. I see down in my Mac toolbar. But no, Prusa Slicer and even if you don't own a Prusa Slicer is a great slicer for any 3D printer. Yep. There are profiles out there to get. You can get shared. There's probably on Facebook on anybody's particular printer, a group thing that there's going to be a Prusa Slicer profile for it. I swear by it. It just works.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then so Tinkercad for design. I'm learning Fusion 360. It is a whole different animal.
It is.
You have to actually unlearn everything about Tinkercad to start thinking about that. One that I've been told is really good that I'm looking at is Shaper 3D.
I've heard the
SHCR3D.
I've heard the same thing.
And that I've talked to a couple of people who said they were able to go through the tutorials and get really doing some cool stuff in like an hour or two. So I'm interested in trying that one. So those are the things I also do my own firmware edits when I need to and stuff, but again, not needed. You can use G-code to do stuff for the Hero Me because you're going to have, if you have an ABL sensor, you're going to want to have the offset for the ABL, and then the Hero Me does move the nozzle 9 millimeters. So that's the other things. Why is there an offset? Why do I have the standoff bar on the gantry adapter, and that is to be able to get all this stuff to work all the time, to have all these print ducts work with any type of hot end.
Yep.
I have to have that nozzle in the exact same place for every single combination. And the only way to do that was to add a 9mm standoff in front of that, so that whether it's a E3D V6, whether it's a Fetus Dragon, whether it's a Mosquito or a Copperhead or a Creality Spider, you go on and on and on. The nozzle's in the exact same place, so the fans are always in the right place. So, the filament path's always in the right place. And you can, with enders, you can actually get that 9mm back, because with enders you can actually move the frame forward. The bolts underneath, on most enders, I don't know if it's every ender, but you can move that forward and get that space back by doing a frame adjustment.
Craig West says, "Don't forget Open SCAD." Have you played with Open SCAD?
Actually, I need to do a big shout out. Another thing, so I wouldn't be where I'm at, and the Hero Me wouldn't be what it is without the help of Craig West from Toronto. Craig is an Open SCAD designer, and all of these beautifully designed ducts for the computational fluid dynamics work we did is all his work. So these ducts and the shape and design of all this duct is Craig's work. And thank you, Craig, for being my partner on this on doing these ducts. So all of the part cooling ducts are done as a start in Tinkercad, and then it goes over to Craig to shape those all correctly in SCAD. I've looked at it. Being a web developer, I'm going, oh, cool. I can see that I can go and just change these values and variables, but it's still a language I'd have to learn.
I'm not a web dev. I've tried Open SCAD. I've tried FreeCAD. FreeCAD is the only live stream that I ever did that I rage quit and deleted the live stream. It is the only live stream
I used FreeCAD as a way to turn steps into SDLs, because I can't bring step files into Tinkercad.
Well, you can do that now with Fusion too, right? Fusion will do that for you.
Yeah, but it's quicker for me. It's just loads up quick. Open save. It's really, really fast.
That is very fair.
But so the other thing about future of Hear Me is that for my patrons, I'm currently working on a spin-off of Hear Me, which will be called the Magnet Edition. And so the threaded inserts made a big step forward, making it easy to assemble and easy to disassemble. But as you know, things happen, and you want to get underneath there. And so for maintenance, you got to disassemble, the Hero Me, take the fans off, etc., etc. So what I'm doing is I am currently in alpha of embedding neodymium magnets where the screws would be, and on the back of the Hero Me base, neodymium magnets. And the original design used disc magnets and would have used 8 of them. But I found that I wanted to be able to support direct drives. And even though the rating on the magnets was more than enough, it wasn't enough buffer. So I've now switched over to some bar neodymium magnets, and the holding force of these 4 is 32 pounds. So the other thing is that they're also keyed. So there's not going to be any left, right, shift, up, down, shift. The parts, when they go together, are keyed. They're locked in place. So as that thing's moving around, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
So this won't be a tool changer thing, because you still have your wiring and other stuff. But if you want to get at that hot end and get in and deal with something, you can be able to lift off the whole Hero Me assembly from, if the hot end's mounted to the X carriage, it'll be there. If the hot end's mounted in the Hero Me, it'll be there. So that's a mod that's going to be exclusive for my patrons.
I like that. I mean, you're going to get flack. We both know you're going to get flack. Oh, he's now locking it behind Patreon. Guess what? Too bad. But I do like that you are going to have, this is the stuff that's going to work. But if you really want to get into the friggin' weeds, Patreon, baby. Where you join the Discord server, you get into the weeds. I like that. I like that, where you're building a community of not only users, but it appears that you're users are also helping you do your job better, which is
Right.
that's what a community is all about.
Right. That's right.
And
Yeah,
Asker
they're giving me
says,
feedback. Hey, the one of the ones that's really interesting, that I got so many complaints on. I don't have one printed out here, but when you have a direct drive system, you've got a stepper motor and you've got the extruder, right?
right,
Now, in this particular case, these guys are married to each other. There's nothing in between. But typically when you add it on some printer, there's some plastic ring, that's in between them that glues the two together to the stand-up. And so
right,
you got extruder, you got this wall with holes in it that's on a bracket, and you got the stepper motor. Well, I did a Hero Me upgrade that's got this, not a full ring, but it's an L shape, so you get the 3 mount points, but it's at the back of the Hero Me. And they were taking the Bondtech and putting it on and wanting to put the stepper behind it and go, wait, the filament path doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. Do you think I don't know how I'm doing my own design, guys? No. You got the wall, the Bondtech goes on it, and the stepper mounter goes on the other side. So the screws come from all the way in the back, through the Bondtech, through to the stepper. If you just flip it around, it all works.
it's pretty cool. Asker says some magnets lose force when they become hot, but they do, but it's like real hot, like
Yeah, real hot. And
touching a
these
hot
are
end hot.
Yeah, these are far enough away from where the hot end is that you've got cooling that is going on from the heat from the fan on the heat sink. The temperature there never gets above 80, 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
You'll melt the plastic before the magnets lose their magnetism.
Yes, correct. Yep,
Yeah.
correct. And again, these are true neodymium magnets, not Amazon claims that you can find neodymium. No, they're all basically refrigerator magnets.
N54
You have to go to a proper
neodymium. It's not N54. Get the hell out of here.
Right. Yeah, you need to go to a proper supplier. So yeah, when I get that far, I will be releasing the spec and suppliers you have to buy a minimum like 12. Well, you're going to use 4 or 6 of them anyway, and they're 60, 70 cents a piece. Not a big deal.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Hey, who doesn't need spare magnets? I have stacks of really little tiny. Oh, can't see them. Little tiny neodymium magnets because they're so useful to use in projects. And my desk is made of steel, so I can just stick them to the desk.
Yeah. So the future is going to continue to support as new printers come out, new hot ends come out, new extruders come out. I'll adapt Hero Me parts to support those on a first come first served basis. I mean, I've got a list of about 20 update requests, and I'm working it down. So if someone asks for it either on Thingiverse or emailing me direct, or even someone on Patreon, it goes on the list, and I work my way down through it. Then making the documentation better and continue to refine and improve that. I'm going to be doing some videos where I'm going to walk through assemblies and things in videos. Like I say, the Hero Me Magnet Edition is going to be this summer. It took a pause because I had to get this documentation done, so it's been unfortunately on the back burner. That's the other thing I'm going to do is that there's about 1,400 patron supporters that are no longer supporters that have stopped. When I have the documentation done, I will be sending that documentation all out to all my previous patron supporters as well.
That's very admirable of you. I know a lot of people would say, you got to rejoin if you want it, but that's admirable of you. Because, of course, now this is a Patreon thing that shows you who's canceled and all that. So, yeah, that's actually really nice.
Well, that's the thing is I promised it a long time ago and I still owe it. So that's my, doing the right thing, making right by what people expected from me. And so everybody's going to get the updated docs.
That's what I like about you, Andy. You're an admirable individual that cares about the industry, that wants to build a community of people that say stock cooling sucks and there are better methods out there. And I like that, because like starting a Patreon in January and getting just a hair under 2,000 people, you're making a lot of the 3D modelers out there jealous, but it shows the value that your project and your product has brought to this community, right? And there, we've got, I actually do have something I'm going to put the hero me on. We've got a CR10 V3 clone that definitely needs to be rewired. We'll get into that in a future video, but it needs to be rewired. And I figure when I do that, that might be a good time to, upgrade the stock cooling. And then maybe we end up with a CR10 style printer as a farm printer. Because like Crealities are just not reliable enough for a farm. And one of the big concerns is the cooling. And having a system like this makes it more valuable to a small business like mine, to a small business like a lot of people's here, to be integrated into their supply stream of machines. I like that. Yeah. Thank you for the work that you do.
So that
it's a see-through benchy.
Yeah, see-through. So this is an untouched Hero.me printed benchy on an Ender 3.
That's freaking quality, man.
Yeah, there's no there was no flies, no filament, no sagging. A well-tuned printer with a Hero.me, you can do really gorgeous prints from. And then it's just a matter of the mechanics and everything else of the reliability of the system. But being able to get quality printing out of a 100, the $99 special from Micro Center, right? If you get, you can get an Ender 3 Pro.
Yeah.
And actually, so I've actually bought several of those. I now have 4 Ender 3s. One was the original Ender 3, one was an Ender 3 Pro, one was a V2, and then I got another Pro, and I've basically turned them all into Ender 3 V2s.
Have you seen the, is it Comgrow that does the refurb Ender 3s? Delivered to your house for like $79, but you have to buy 10 of them. One of our patrons did it.
Yeah.
He's like, I figure at $79 a piece, even if half of them are bad, I've got enough parts to fix all the others.
Yeah.
I said, what are you going to do with 10 printers? He said, I don't know yet. They've been put in storage. I said, and there's the problem. It's cool, right? It's cool. And I've thought about it, but I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with 10 more printers? I don't have the room for 10 more right now. And I'm not cool like Uncle Jesse and Tom and Stefan and all the big YouTubers are Joel. They're all getting studios this year. That's like the big YouTuber thing this year. I'm not big enough for that yet, but hopefully one day soon we'll get our own studio where I can build out a print farm and say, let's put 10 Prusas up against 10 Enders and see who wins. It's gonna be an easy video.
Yeah, I'm at 16 printers now. And
what's your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite, I got to say the Prusa. I mean, and second is my Ender 3, my very customized Ender 3s.
What's your most hated printer?
That's the most hated printer is probably I think I'm going to fix it, is my TwoTrees Sapphire Pro Core XY. It's probably my most hated. That or the Wanhao i3. Those are probably the least used. Nothing's been printed on those two for several months.
It's like the M3D Micro that we have. I bought it at an estate sale for $5. Like, do you want to buy the filament? I said, no, you can just, I'll buy it, but you got to throw it away. I don't want it.
There it is there.
Yeah, it's in the photo. Because I bought it for $5. The guy's like, why do you want the printer without the film? I said, because I run a 3D printer business. Somebody's going to buy that printer and make it my problem to fix it, and I don't want that. So I'm going to buy it. That
was my very first printer. I Kickstarter backed that. And of course got it, and it was a big deal back then. They were the biggest 3D printing project at the time. Of course, unfortunately, I think the company is now gone or nearly gone.
They weren't great.
But another one that I did right after that, you may have heard of the Tiko, the Delta.
Yep.
I was a backer of the Tiko, and I was one of the few that actually got one. And it lasted about 6 months. And had to modify it significantly to make it be smooth. And of course, a whole lot of people were upset about that one. So, but those are what got me into printing, and got me excited about it and go, making something out of nothing. And, but yeah, so my biggest project right now is, a Core XY that I built with a friend that is a exoslide based Core
Oh,
XY that is 400 by 400 by 350. And it's got the Big Tree Tech Octopus controller. It's got 4Z axis motors. It's a frame within a frame. It's a fixed bed bottom, and then the whole XYZ gantry moves up and down on Z.
that's nice.
And so I'm currently wiring that one up. And of course, it's got a Hero Me on
Boy, I wonder why. Uh, we got a $10 super chat from the fourth J. Thanks for your support. They're saying, been wanting a 3D printer since the beginning. Wish me luck with my Ender 3. Keep pushing the content. Thanks,
it.
dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Ender 3 is a great starting printer. It really
They
is.
are. And the
Yeah.
V2, and I said this in the video, I bought an Ender 3 V2 simply to make a video about it. It punches way above its price class. Like,
Yep.
it should not be this good. Now, don't get me wrong. There are so many things I would change on it.
Yep.
But it should not be that good for the money. And the OG Ender 3, again, it's much better than you would expect for $100.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or $110, whatever the OG Ender 3 is going for. And like, I bought my Ender 3 V2 for $165 brand new. And I bought a CR-10 V3 clone for $210. I'm watching 3D Printing Deals Twitter account. If you have an impulse buying problem, do not go to that Twitter page. If you don't have an impulse buying problem, you can go check them out. Not affiliated with them whatsoever, and all their links are affiliates. That's how they make their cash. But like, huge deals. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
God, $162 for an Ender 3 V2. Damn it, I can't say no to that.
Yeah, there's a guy out of, I think he's in Peru, that has done a firmware
Gyres,
upgrade.
right?
Pardon? No. Competitor Gyres.
Oh,
Yeah, but I believe better than Gyres.
okay.
Gyres, I think, has more is more well known, but this is a professional firmware. It's on GitHub, and I'm gonna wish I could not draw a blank on the guy's name. But it's what I use on all my Enders. I've reflashed everything to his. Much more control over it with the menus. More you can do on screen with the menus. Very little that you have to ever go edit in firmware. If you ever need to deal with things like XY offsets for the ABL, or for even the Hero Me to adjust for the Y offset for the nozzle, all that stuff is all at the menu level.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great piece of firmware just for the Ender 3 V2 and the S1. I think he's now doing it for the S1. Where Tim's firmware for the Ender 3 with the older style display is good stuff, but I wanted to use the modern display, and Tim hasn't made his compatible with the color LCD displays.
He'll get there eventually.
So I went with the I think it's called professional. I think he uses it's called professional firmware. It's on GitHub, and let me see if I can get the name real fast here.
And I want to give a big thank you to Dominic Versetto for the $5 super chat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We've got...
There it is.
Dominic...
Real quick. MRISCOC.
MRISCOC.
And that's his... Yeah, so it's MRISCO, MRISCOC on GitHub. GitHub/MRISCO/Ender3V2 S1. That is the firmware that I use.
Here, I'm going to put a link to his thing in the chat here so people have it. Dominic is asking, he went with the dual 5015s for the Hero Me on their Ender 5. They know it's overkill. They set the fan speed to 40. Is there a rule of thumb for fan speed with the Hero Me?
Yeah, so especially if you got dual fans, either dual 4020s or dual 5015s, I run them at 40 to 45% for normal printing, and then if I have extreme overhangs or long bridging, I spin them up to 65%. Again, your mileage may vary, different brands of printer, of fans, etc., but 40 to 45% for normal print with dual fans. If you're going to have a single 5015 into a dual duct, then I run the fan probably at 55%, and would take it to 75% when doing extreme overhangs or long bridging. Never run it at 100%. Never run it at 100. And again, the other benefit is the things run really quiet. The only thing you hear is probably the power supply fan.
That's fair. Like the big printer that we're gonna talk about this off stream, but the big printer that I want to work on has one of the loudest power supply fans in the fleet, and it is the most expensive FDM printer that I own, and it has the most loud power supply in the fleet. It's USA made. It's ridiculously loud. But yeah, that printer has cooling only on one side, and it's a volcano. So like double problem when you're talking about cooling solutions.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so and that's the other thing is again with the adjustability. If you've got a volcano nozzle, the only hot end that I have not made Hear Me compatible with yet is that super volcano with like the 3-inch tall.
That is so, but it's so niche.
Yeah,
And quite frankly, a client of ours has decided to buy their own printer. They're buying a Modix Big 60 because they need to make a couple of really big parts. And they're like, yeah, we'll just buy the printer. I'm like, okay, let me know when you want to get rid of it. And they bought the she said, I just bought all the upgrades, right? I bought everything. And one of them was the super volcano. I said, do you know about the super volcano? He's like, but I'm sure it's fine. I said, dude, if you just flick it when it's printing, the damn thing breaks, heat breaks. Hybrid Robotics is asking, what printer is it? Fine. It's my Fusion 3 F410. That is the printer that I love. The printer. It's a great printer, but it's got some downfalls that I really want fixed. And yeah, it's the Fusion 3 F410. But yeah, it's like that printer does not use belts. It uses Spectra, like fishing line. It's really strong, but because there's no stretch, but it makes it impossible to tension it. You have to. There are some weird ways to tension the belts or tension the string on this. But yeah, it's also one of the few FDM printers that we have that are fully enclosed. But that is the only FDM printer that is fully enclosed that I did not build myself. So that makes things a little bit different. Because yeah, enclosures really do help when you're printing high temp materials like carbon fibers and all that. Have you noticed any benefit to printing in high temp? Say we printed a Hero Me out of carbon fiber polycarbonate. Do you see a benefit in printing that versus doing it out of like PLA or PETG?
Well, so yeah, that brings a comment a lot of times. Say, gee, I've had users say, hey, my duct tips warp, and they printed the duct tips in PLA. So my recommendation is always minimally PETG, but I don't follow my own rules, and here's what I do. Yes, do I print my duct tips in PLA Plus? I do. But how I get away with that is every single nozzle is fully enclosed in a silicon sock on all 4 sides. If you do that,
you need socks.
Yes, yeah. If you do that, you're actually losing less energy in total because there's less heat loss. So it's a benefit all the way around, but it protects the duct tips. If you're going to do any printing in an enclosure, if you want to print ASA, if you want to print ABS, if you want to print polycarbonate, then you have to print the Hero Me in ASA, ABS, or polycarbonate. Yep. Because that's the only way that stuff is, PLA and PETG is not going to survive a heated chamber for any length of time.
And I guess I say we do make some upgrades to Prusas. We put a silicone sock on all of them, but then I also their little fan shrouds are printed in ABS. I print them all out of polycarbonate, or this one is particularly PC ABS.
So the one upgrade that I did do, I lied. I did do an upgrade to the Prusas before I did the Mutant, and I'd recommend it highly. I've done a remix of it, and that's the Delta P. It's on printables.com, and it is an awesome cooling duct. For a 5015 to give dual ducts down there. It's a true dual duct system, and it makes the Prusa more like a Hero Me in that it's doing the right kind of cooling. So yeah, I would recommend that if you really want to get the best results out of cooling is go with a Delta P duct or my derivative of the Delta P duct.
I'll have to try it out because we just lost it's a black print, but it at some point during the print shredded its fan duct. The print's totally fine. I looked, I'm like, Huh. All right. Well, it must have got caught on a print, and the print had enough bed adhesion that it didn't come off. But yeah, shredded the thing, so I got to make a new one. So I'll have to make yours and see how it works. The Hybrid Robotics is saying they'd love to be able to print high temp filaments. They're concerned about the fumes and venting. And I said, then stay away from FRABS. That's a fire retardant ABS. Truly one of the worst smelling plastics I've ever printed. Like, the F410 is filtered and vented, right? So it vents into the room, but it goes through 2 stages of activated carbon and 1 stage of HEPA. There was no stopping this smell. I had to toss. I ended up making it on a Prusa Mini because it fit on a Mini under a cardboard box inside of my laser cutter in my garage. Like, oh, you know, like, all right, if something really goes wrong, the cardboard box catches fire. Fine. I'll put it inside the laser, which is made of steel, right? So in the event that something goes off, the laser will contain the fire. It was totally fine, of course, but, you know. And when the print was over, I would turn on the ventilation for the laser to clean the air before I opened up the opening to get the printer to get the print off, because it was really, really bad material.
So Monsieur Mansur has a question about mentioning that the radial fans have a high static pressure compared to axial fans. Why is that important? Okay, you've got to push
it through
the air through this small opening, and it's squeezing down, so the pressure increases. So you've got to have enough static pressure to be able to push that air to get it come out the other way. Otherwise, you end up getting the fan spinning, but no air coming out because it's just stalling.
Chopping the air.
Right, it's just chopping air, right? So you've got to have the ability to push it and push it through at that higher thing. So that's why you never want to use axial fans on a part cooling duct, because you're never going to get the airflow that you need out of this compressed channel. So that's the reason.
The only
and you
way
see, I see all the time these big, even 50 millimeter, 50-15 axial fans on either side going down, thinking, oh, that's going to push a lot of air. No, a 40-20, which is not as good as a 50-15, will do a whole lot better. Yeah.
The more extruder, like, that's ridiculous.
That does not do it.
It's a 1.2 millimeter nozzle. You barely want to cool this thing.
Well,
but
there you go.
Yeah, you know. Also, look at the chonk on this hot end. This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it works, but you got to run it real slow. But yes. Also, notice that there is no silicone sock that fits it, so I just kind of stretched a hexagon one to fit it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Hybrid Robotics saying they really want to be able to print polycarb for robot chassis components. You can go jank and use a cardboard box or Tupperware container, or you can go a little bit more legit, get yourself a hot box from Wham Bam.
Yes, yes. I have 2 of them. I love them.
But here's the secret, and my buddy Jordan, Mad Monkey, taught me this. Don't throw out the shipping box if you buy it. The shipping box will be real thin. You can fold up the hot box and put it back into the shipping box, and that's the storage container for it.
Yeah, the folding up, you've got to remember how to fold that up, because it won't, unless you know it, it will not fold as flat as it came.
Right.
And if you know the right order, it'll get nice and flat, and you can put it back in the box. Yep.
Yeah, I've never understood why Lulzbot did this. I mean, even the hot end cooling fan, you can see how far a neck's down. These fans are nowhere near as efficient as they could be. Now, they do have a pretty significant opening down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
But the volume, so what you're doing is you're looking at how much air can flow versus how much air is being blocked. If you're using axial fans like this and your opening is the same overall square foot, square inch or square millimeter sizing, it's totally fine. Because then you're not dealing with pressures.
Here's the rule of thumb is you need to have the opening no smaller than 50% of the area that is coming out of the duct from the fan itself. Yeah. And if you've squeezed it further than that, you're going to get back pressure and you're going to get stalling, and you're not going to get the best of it. And that was one of the big things that we changed from Gen 5 into Gen 6 with part cooling, is we increased the duct openings by 50% and greatly improved the performance overall. So yeah, that's the big deal there.
Awesome. Yeah, cooling is something that I think is seldomly ignored for 3D printing. And, it's blamed on wet filament, bad retraction, wet filament, and wet filament one more time. And 95% of it can be completely dealt with on
Yeah.
getting proper cooling. Are there changes to Hero Me that you would love to do, but just haven't been able to do it yet, other than the magnets, of course?
Well, that's a good question. Changes I'd love to do that I haven't done yet. Wow.
This is a good time for any collaborators to be listening.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. The I have to think about that. I think probably the related thing that I did way ahead of it being of any interest, but now they're going, what is this for? What is this for? And that's these two holes on the bottom of every Hero Me Gen 6. And that's to be able to mount that ADXL 345 accelerometer for clipper use. And now because I got people going, hey, can you mount a clipper? I said, yeah, it's been there since the beginning of Gen 6, waiting for you to come and put your boards there. And there are different manufacturers, and so they're layouts. And so I also have created a couple of adapter boards, because if your hole spacing for your board isn't this width, I've got adapters that will go to 3 different sizes for the different boards that I've found online. And then if that doesn't do it, there's a remix on Thingiverse that mounts in front of, off of the 2 screws from the part cooling fan, that mounts it out here. Because there are scenarios where you don't want it down here because you've got a really large hot end. And so, but yeah, so that's one that I kind of was ahead of the game on, and now I've got people going, oh wow, it's there. Okay, I wondered what that was for. Great.
Are you supporting like the slice mosquito and copperheads? They got the wide.
So I support the mosquitoes completely. I just last night finished making an adapter for the mosquito for Creality, which is a customized mosquito that has the mounting holes that goes over the 2 standoffs on a Creality Ender 3. So I had to change the gantry adapter to work around that. And the copperhead. So that's the other thing. Kind of brings another topic up. Is people ask me, gee, would you make the Hero Me for a Hemera? Would you make the Hero Me for a BIQ H2? Would you make the Hero Me for a Bondtech DDX? And I'm going, sorry guys, I can't do it. And I said, why? Well, because the Hero Me was designed when there were hot ends that fit in 24 millimeters, 26 millimeters max, right?
Yep.
And these things, I can't wrap. If I were to modify the Hero Me to wrap around a Hemera, well, then it wouldn't be a Hero Me anymore, because all the parts for it, the environment, wouldn't fit on it.
Right.
Now, having said that, could I and will I be making some part cooling ducts that are Hero Me spec design that then mount and wrap around a Hemera or a BIQ H2 or an S1? Yeah, that's on my radar. But they'll be Hero Me inspired, but they won't be Hero Me. Because yeah, the Hero Me is an ecosystem. So the lifespan, if the world goes to what was originally, we talked about earlier, the Wanhao, and now is the
Creality style, the
S1, the LGX Sidekick, the Hemera, going to these integrated hot end extruder combos as one. If that's the future, it may well be. Then the Hero Me, its life will be for all those people with printers who have more traditional extruders and hot ends separate. Do you
want to see the industry go to that? Like, is there part of you that wants to go back to the hot end extruder integration? Because personally, I do. I want more direct drive. I don't like Bowden systems.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I believe in direct drive. And so before Hero Me Gen 6, you could do direct drive on Hero Me's, but it was a separate bracket that mounted onto the X carriage. And I saw firsthand from friends using it, where when they're doing flexibles or they're doing something with a lot of retractions, like you try and print an Eiffel Tower model has got millions of retractions. I mean, literally millions of retractions.
Yep.
And you see this direct drive and the body go up and down. It'll vibrate, and it actually causes a problem with retraction because the two are not in sync. So that's what was changed with the Gen 6 is now the direct drive is mounted directly to the body. So there is no flex, there is no play. And I get people complaining that, oh, but the PTFE tube is 1 inch longer. It's not about the length of the PTFE tube between 1 inch or 2 inches. It's about having that whole space captive with no room for the PTFE tube to flex. That's the thing. In a Hero Me, the space between the hot end and the direct drive is totally captive. So there is no room for that PTFE tube to flex around. It's in a completely captive chamber. So an extra inch long is not going to make any difference for flexibles.
Like my Big Fusion 3 has a 30-inch Bowden tube. 30 inches. And we can still get gorgeous prints on it. You just really have to tune in that retraction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, I absolutely believe direct drives as close to the hot end is the way to go. I think I believe in choice, right? But by going with a scenario like a Chimera or the S1 or the LGX Sidekick, etc., you're locked into a single ecosystem. With having the ability to choose what extruder I want, what hot end I want, I've got choice, I've got flexibility. That's really where the Hero Me is all about. It's all about flexibility and choice. If something changes, if you need to replace this hot end, nothing else has to go away. You just replace the part needed to mount the hot end. Everything else still fits. So yeah, that's the philosophy is with standardization, flexibility, adaptability, and I've had people talk to me and say, hey, I had a Chimera, I had a Hero Me Gen 3 and then Gen 5, and now I'm on Gen 6, and I like how I decided to go, I used the original 4010 radial fans and then was able to save money and swap them out for 5015s, and I didn't have to change the whole cooling system. All I did was change the part cooling ducts. Right. So yeah, that's really the philosophy behind it is make it flexible, make it adaptable, and make it do great cooling and the whole assembly. So
I like this philosophy. It falls in line with kind of, to me, the roots of the 3D printing industry, right?
Yep.
Make things universal, make things accessible, make it easy and affordable for people to modify, and open source. So Andy, I greatly appreciate your time. Are there any final thoughts that you have for us today?
No, I think that I want to thank you very much for inviting me here. It's been a great chat. I look forward to talking to you again soon and offline about that printer. Again, I just want to do a shout out to Craig West for his help with me on the ducting, and a big thank you to all my patrons. And for those of you watching now or in the future on the fence, please check out the Hero Me if you want great cooling. I think you can't go wrong putting on a Hero Me system. So thanks very much.
I would agree, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget, links to Andy's Patreon are going to be, they are in the description right now. And if you're watching or listening to this audio only in the future, make sure to check out the show notes so you can get the links to the Patreon where you can support Andy and this wonderful cause called Hero Me. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.
Take care.